In this video, we're going to work on the Khan Academy project ad design. So they've basically given us this project where they want us to design an advertisement for some product, or real or imaginary, and go through some steps. So I added, like, kind of tried to make the instructions a little bit more specific. So I asked for 3 text function calls, 3 text size function calls, 3 drawing or image function calls, and then to use a draw function to animate either the text or the shape. So I think that's a little bit clearer as far as what exactly I'm looking for. And so yeah, so for me, I just picked this card that I was going to design. So it's from Lord of the Rings, but it's this card, it's this picture of this sword, and so I'm going to try to do some JavaScript to make it look something like this. And so this is, I've already kind of started and gotten some of the code running here, and this is what I have so far. So basically, when you're kind of trying to go through the steps and complete all the things that it's asking for in this assignment, one of the things, there's kind of 3 main things you got to think about. First is you need to have your variables defined as far as where you're going to get your main numbers from. And basically, you're pretty much, if you're going to animate it, you kind of have to pick one item that is going to be your like base, and then everything else is a percentage based off of that. So in my case, like I'm using the rectangle width, so that's going across left to right here, the width of the rectangle, and then the height right here is up and down is 1.45 times bigger. So that's just the percentage of the size that I decided to make that. So everything's kind of based off of that. Now you don't have to do the exact same thing with the X and the Y. That's the position of it. So like mine, when I increase the size, it actually moves where the rectangle starts. So that's just optional. That's like where I did it. But there's no rule that says you have to make those match up there. I'm going to put this back to 100 here. So that's getting started with that part. I have a background. Oh, actually, the next thing I was going to show is the draw function. So you need to do a draw function, and then your curly bracket, and then your curly bracket ends in your semicolon down here, and then everything else is inside of that draw function. And you need to draw your background every time too, or else it won't look right over here. So put your draw function, your variables can be outside of your draw function, but then do your draw function. And then for animation, you need to do, there's kind of 2 ways so far that we've done as far as animation is we've taken a variable and made it equal to itself, and then add a number or subtract a number to make it get bigger or smaller. And the other thing that we've done is we've made things equal to the X and the Y. So you define those things, and it's going to run whatever is inside of the function. It's going to run all that code and do that. So that's kind of the 3 main steps. And then once you get that established, then the rest of it is just doing the math inside of your draw function for all the other pieces so that they stay in proportion when you change one of the variables. So I'm going to show one example right here, which is this rectangle right here is this skinny one going up and down here, but I need to add a cross beam here to make it look like a sword. So just for example, like I can just come in here. This is how I would start. I would just make a rectangle, and I would just start guessing numbers that you think it might be. So I'm going to do 50 50 50 for everything. It's going to make it a square, but now that I have that, now I can move it around and see what it looks like. So I want it to be pretty well centered. That's good. And I want it to be more down here, and it needs to be, actually the width at 50 was probably about right. And then it looks like about 5 looks good. So now I need to move it back down some more. So now I'm looking like a sword. It's actually kind of wide. I could probably shrink that down a bit, maybe like 40, and then move it over some. So that's getting to be like, it's kind of looking more like a sword. So I've done those numbers, but now if I'm up here and I change this, that just stays in place. So what I need to do is I need to do some math so that these numbers are basically kind of equivalent to so that they can be based off of this 100 up here, based off of the rect W variable. So 75 is 75%. So what I can do is I can do rect W, and I'm going to do times 0.75, and then it's multiplying 0.75 times 100. So when I move it, it's going to stay in proportion now. Let's put this back to 100. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I can probably do rect W times 1.114. And this one is going to be 40 is less than 100. So I think if I do rect W times 0.4, and then on this one I could actually, there's probably a couple ways I could do it. 5 is 20 times smaller than 100, so I'm going to do rect W divided by 100 and delete my 5. And then let's refresh this and see if it worked. All right, so something is not happy there. Oh, I have an extra multiplier here, right here. Let's change that. All right, so something I did is not, for some reason, it's not wide enough. Let's play around with some of these. Divided by 100? Nope. Remember, I said I wanted to divide it by 20. That was my problem. So I'm dividing 100 divided by 20. The rect W is 100. I'm dividing by 20, and that's going to give me 5 when it's 100. But if I crank this up to 200, now I divide it by 20, and I should get 10. So then that size there has increased to 10. So that's basically the math that you have to do for every single thing. So you can see here, that's the same thing I've done with the text size too. I've made the text size based on this 200 right here, and so everything grows and moves together with that. And then this is where I could come down here and animate it, and if I made it grow, now there's something, I've only defined the width. I haven't created any animation for the Y part. So that's something you can explore and play around with and see what math you need to do to make the Y or the height actually up here change in proportion with the width. So I'm gonna comment this out again so we can see it. But that is kind of the basics. Again, you need to define your variables. You need to write your things inside of a function. Start by putting in real numbers and then do the math to make them equal to use division or multiplication to make them proportional the way you want them. And the same thing with the text. And then either use the plus or minus or use the equals to like mouse X and Y to change it. So then it's equal to mouse X and Y. It's doing that. Put that back in. All right, that's it. Thanks.